Well, just a short backstory. I'll try not to ramble too much, but Dave was in New York for a very long time. And when I moved to New York in 2001. He had a residency at the famous 55 bar, which is now closed. But as a young, a college student with a fake ID, you could kind of you get into these bars, and he played every week with just exceptional bands. Like Brian Blade was on drums a lot of the time, or he'd have two drummers, and I hadn't heard a lot of music. Like St. Louis is a very traditional, um, in terms of music, it's like traditional jazz. That's kind of what I grew up playing there. So I hadn't heard this mix of uh, different types of music being integrated into jazz.
Mm.
Um, so I knew David, and then through the years we played together a little bit. Like he called me to play the 55 bar um, two or three times, and then we ended up touring together in Europe, probably around 2009. Just by chance, he was like, "Are you going to be in Europe? I have a short tour." He couldn't fly over a drummer from New York. I think he heard that I was in Europe at the time, um, so we had these little like meetups, and it was always a real connection musically happening, like something different than a lot of other musicians I had met, because we talk about electronic music and other influences that we had, and ambient music. And so anyway, we were teaching together at a workshop, a jazz workshop 2 summers ago in Italy. And Dave was like, "I heard you're living in Montreal. That's crazy. I didn't know you were there." Um, he's like, "I'll be there uh, later this month. Do you want to play some gigs? Get some gigs booked." So we played Diazones, great club in town, and a couple other gigs. Remy Jean LeBlanc was on bass, wonderful uh, bass player in Montreal, and and we had a blast. And uh, my dear friend in town, who's just become like someone who I work with on a lot of different projects, Warren Spicer, from Unessential Oils, and the other band, Plants and Animals, of course. Um, he was at these shows at Dia Zones, and um, Dave and I were kind of talking about recording some music that we were sitting on. So we got together. Dave came over to my space, and we tried some ideas, and we both wrote a couple of little riffs, nothing crazy. And Warren engineered the sessions, and we went to mix art. I booked a couple of days. It's become like my second home. It's just my favorite studio in the world, in NDG. And so Dave and I like did the groundwork. We kind of decided what pieces would be duo, and then there were a few that kind of lent themselves to having some, other musicians, some bass, piano. So we called Parker Shper, who I was sharing my studio with at the time, and Levi Dover, and Dave Gossage, who I didn't know. I'd heard about Dave. I heard he was like the John Coltrane of flute. So
Yeah.
Dave Binney was just
Yeah.
couldn't, yeah, and they're old friends actually. Um, so they came in for half a day, and we worked 2 really full days at Mixart, and then we took everything, and then Dave and I just worked at our um, respective studios. He went back to LA, and worked at my studio up in Villeray, and it took about 2 years to get the
Right.
record
Okay.
ready to go, thanks to Elastic Recordings, which is a Canadian based record label in Toronto. They heard it and they kind of gave us the little push
Yeah.
to put it out.
And this album is, I mean, when we know who you are, Tommy Crane and David Binney and all those guys like Dave Gossage and Lev and Parker Shper and so on, and Thomas Carbou
Yeah,
also.
Thomas, I'm sorry.
And
Yeah, I forgot to
yeah.
mention Thomas.
And I mean, you guys can, you can put it out quite strongly. I mean, in terms of sounds, in terms of rhythms and free improv and so on. But this album is more toned down. I feel a bit more relaxed, generally speaking. So, why is that? And is that something that you associate with Montreal, or there's another reason?
Um, I think it's a sound that Dave and I explore a bit on
Mm,
our own, but um, I mean there is something to Montreal that I personally really another thing that I love about it is just um, I don't feel that type of anxiety that I felt on a day-to-day basis in New York.
mm,
Um, I just like studio mixed art is a good example. Like I go in there, I don't feel like I I didn't feel like we were on the clock
all
that
right.
we had to like get this
Yeah.
done and this done and um, there's there's a different sense of time here. So maybe that's a part of it. Like we're
Yeah.
um, but if anything, I think it's not um trying to say it's a reflection of how we feel about Montreal's music scene. I think that there's a again like a thread between improvisation, creative uh,
Mm,
music, and indie rock, and
yeah.
um, I think you can live in multiple worlds. There's no boundary
Yeah.
in this the same way. And we both come from New York,
Yeah.
so it's like I really spent a good number of years trying to be like a jazz musician, and then I
Okay.
at
Yeah.
a certain point I realized I had a very strong love for bands and for playing.